Yes, I've seen someone post a picture of this on the Facebook group before.
Describe what you're seeing.
It's incredible. It's Rochester in his gypsy costume, but it's like straight on, and you can just tell that it's like a weird looking man in a wig in a dress, and Jane is standing before him.
So the costume is not hiding his identity even a little bit at all.
Oh, amazing. If that's the man that you fall in love with, like, wow. Hey, Lillian, you said you have a little something for me?
Yes, I do. So obviously everybody's super excited that we watched the 1949 Jane Eyre. We've got a lot to say about it, I'm sure. But when I went to go watch this, I was like, it feels like it's been a really long time since I watched a version of Jane Eyre that was A, not a musical, B, not taking place in like modern day or in like some other place, or like really kind of outside of our like standard traditional Jane Eyre adaptations. So I looked it up, and I want you to tell me A, when the last time you think we watched one was, and B, what you think it was.
So I was just thinking about this too, because I'm like, boy, I kind of miss like seeing this like period drama that we know and love. I'd say it's probably been a month, if not more than a month. And I would guess the last version would have been Sandil? I don't know. What was it?
Sandil, I didn't count in this. That was a really long time ago as well. But I didn't count Sandil because it takes place in India. It's this Hindi movie. Like it's in a different time period. Like it's not trying to be like a straight up and down Jane Eyre adaptation. The last time we watched a straight up and down Jane Eyre adaptation was May 9th.
What?
And it was the 1970s version. I checked this 3 times. I was so shocked.
As in the good 70s one that we love?
Well, okay. I would argue they're both good. But
yes,
our
for debate.
Our precious baby angel, our precious baby angel that we both love so much.
Amazing. Wow. I keep thinking to myself, because we've kind of talked about, rewatching the 80s one, but we've said maybe we should like save it for at the end of this podcast.
I want it after we're done with the book.
Okay, because I am jonesing for it, and like every time I watch a new adaptation, I keep thinking about Timmy D, and I'm like, I just really want to go back to Timmy D, but I don't want to like watch his miniseries, and then the next week you're like, let's do the thing, and I'll be like, oh, I just watched this. I mean, not that it's ever too much.
Don't watch it. I won't. I will. Spoilers for our listeners on like, or peek behind the curtain, really. I'm a crazy person. So I'm like really organized. I'm like, I love a spreadsheet. So I have this really dramatic spreadsheet that has all episodes we've done and all of our ratings and where to find all the adaptions and what we're going to potentially do in the future. And I have it on the schedule for, I can't remember how long out, but it's pretty quick after we finish the book, which we have 2 sections left of the book.
Awesome. Cool. And when Lillian says she's
really funny.
When Lillian says she's a crazy person, what she means is that she's an organized professional who brings it into her hobbies. And I am the actual crazy person where if she did not do that, we'd be scrambling like mad animals. So
we've talked about this before. We have a beautiful complementary set of skills.
Yeah. It all works so good. But as you mentioned, yes, today we are talking about the 1949 made for TV movie adaptation. It was like brought to you by like some kind of like either brand, like I know oftentimes they would have like a soap or a cereal or something, or like Kraft mac and cheese hour.
So this was like, they did these I think they were called Studio One, because I like went down how I love a IMDb rabbit hole.
Sure do. Just call her Alice.
So I spent a lot of time like looking into like what this was. And these were like every Saturday or Sunday or whatever it was, they would always have one of these movies. They had a lot of the same actors. So like those contracts we talked about where actors would have a contract with the studio. So they'd be in a lot of those movies. When we talk about the cast, I'll mention that again, but like, that's what these were. And I also just want to say right up top, because I think it's so important to point out our just like gut reactions to these. This is my new favorite movie. It's so terrible.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I agree that it's not the best adaptation we've ever watched, but I think it's easily better than the 50s one where he's drunk.
Oh my God, we're going to talk about all of this, you guys. I really spent a lot of time like thinking about what about the terrible nature of this hit me right in the funny bone. I also I was just telling Piper, it's not been the best week of my life. And I sat down and I went, I missed watching crappy versions of Jane Eyre where they're just trying to do it. And I just died laughing the whole movie. It's
Oh my gosh.
so funny. Anyway, we owe you a recap because I know you guys are all like, what is Jane Eyre? What is the story are you even talking about?
How did I get to this podcast?
Where am I? How do I get out of here? All valid questions.
Of which we can only help you with one, and that is the recap. But yes. Lillian has it this week. So let's see. What do you have for us, Lillian? For people who have not. Oh, right. It's been a while.
That's the point. I know. What is this podcast even about anymore?
Oh, I don't know, dude. Hang on. Let me even dig through my box of props to find where the hell I kept my old-timey Coach clicker timer thing. Okay. Here it is. I've got it. I'm putting on my little whistle and my really short shorts.
I'm picturing it all. It's great. It comes with a hat in my head.
Yeah. All right. And whenever you're ready.
All right. So Jane is leaving Lowood School. She is an adult. She did not have a great time there. And that teacher thinks she's going to hell about it. But Jane thinks that teacher's going to hell. And she's going to Thornfield, just like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, because she says Thornfield, Thornfield, Thornfield. And then she's there. And then she is like, oh my God, I love this little girl. I love this lady. We're all best friends. I hope I get to meet a guy in a very normal way. And then she does when she's told he's in the room downstairs and she goes and meets him. And then he says a bunch of weird stuff that we're all just supposed to be okay with. And then multiple times, like weird shit happens. Like, for example, his wife keeps watching her out of a window. And then she lights a newspaper on fire under his chair. And for no reason at all, Jane wakes up and saves his life. Then he is pretty violent with her, but they fall in love. At the wedding, two guys show up and go visit the wife in the house. And then they go almost nowhere and see almost no other places. And then she leaves and stands near a tree for a while before she decides to come back because she changed her mind. And part of the house that we can't see did burn. And they're in love again because even though he's blind, she came back and loved him anyway.
Oh my God. 1 minute, 23 seconds.
I loved this movie so much.
Oh my gosh. It is very clear that they just had 2 rooms to film in. Although still,
I wrote down the number of sets that they have.
It's still better than the 50s one with the weird black backdrop and hovering things.
But even 57 had them meet on a horse.
Yes, that's very true. They didn't even address that. There were quite a few things that they're like, we're just going to skip over that thing.
I know.
Actually, my first note that I made is when she's leaving Lowood and the teacher is escorting her out, aka kicking her out on the street. I love how right away this woman is addresses this fact that we people who know the story, we often are like, why doesn't Jane fall back on her network? And this lady right off the bat, she's like, by the way, you have no support network. So when the inevitable thing happens, you're going to get kicked out of whatever job or relationship you're in, which I know will happen because I hate you, then you're not welcome back here. And Jane's like, okay, well, fuck you. I'm going to go off on my own. I have no friends, no family. But like Lillian said, I guess I do have these magic shoes that take me to a place where I have this job.
So my first overall thoughts note is tell, don't show. That's a classic writer's thing. Every kid in their lit class, in any film class you learn that you definitely just need monologues where people tell you about the characters instead of showing any of that. So I got that a bit, it was a little bit you need to do a quick condense, we only have an hour, we're not going to have time to go into her childhood. How are we going to just condense that down to a single minute? So I was giving it to them then. I was like, I get it. You've got to have this. But Jane was also the one who said, I have a fiery spirit and this place couldn't tame me. And then we saw no evidence of that for the rest of the movie.
I did like, though, I wrote down too that I'm like, damn, right off the bat, she's extremely confident. Like, this is the first thing we know about this character is that she's turned 18. She's getting kicked out of this like school, whatever it is. And she says to herself, she's like, I may not have a lot going for me, but I'm going to fucking make it work. And then she just like leaves and it's like, way to go. You've got confidence. Let's see what happens.
They also contradicted themselves with her age more than once because they say she's 18 when she leaves, or they say something like where they imply that she's 18.
Mhm.
And then later she tells someone she's 20. And then Rochester calls her 18 again later. But I don't think continuity was what this movie was worried about.
I don't think so. No. I think they were just really excited that they got Charlton Heston to be their Rochester, who...
Oh my God. Can we talk about Charlton Heston right off the bat?
Yes, let's talk about him.
Okay, so Charlton Heston, if you don't know that name, go Google it. You definitely do. He's like wildly famous. Like he is the trope of a 50s movie star. Like when you picture a 50s movie star in your head, you're picturing Charlton Heston.
Yes.
He was in Ben-Hur.
Ten Commandments.
He played Moses in 10 Commandments, which was 7 years after this. He had one of those contracts that I was talking about with the studio. This was one of the first movies that he did with that contract. He was in movies starting again in 1949 when this came out. His very first movie was in 1941, and he was in nothing between 1941 and 1949. So really? He was in like this movie in 1941 and then nothing. And then then he did a bunch of these TV movies. And then really quickly after that, he gained a lot of fame.
Wow.
Yeah. He also, one of the other movies that he did at this time was Heathcliff and Wuthering Heights, the same year as this came out.
Interesting. One of these days, we're going to have to do Wuthering Heights as a palate cleanser because like how I started on this path, I've never read the book. I've never seen a version. I know that it's like gothic romance, but it seems like it's way darker and sadder. But I think we should consume that at some point just to have a basis of comparison.
Yeah, I think Wuthering Heights, I feel exactly the same about. I've always like looked at Wuthering Heights and been like, that looks like a bummer. But frankly, I looked at Jane Eyre and thought the same thing. So I have actually, again, we already referred to the fact that I'm a crazy person. So I have a few different adaptions that we could consider. And I think we would probably do a poll like we did with our last palate cleanser. So if you have Wuthering Heights adaptions that you're like, you've got to watch this is the one, send those to us and we'll consider it.
We will consider it. That's the main key. I also just want to say, because I think about this all the time. I wake up and I'm like, I'm thinking about it. But no, Charlton Heston also, he is the one who shouts, Soylent Green is people from the movie Soylent Green. So I was expecting lots of shouting and like bigness, which we got a little bit of.
Right? Okay, here's another thing. So we know that this was very beginning of his career. We know that he was in a movie in 1941, which was 8 years prior to this. This is the most interesting fact to me about this movie. So I'm starting there. I have the ages of both our Rochester, Charlton Heston, and Mary Sinclair, our Jane. How old do you think Charlton Heston was when he filmed this movie?
So his career hasn't quite launched, and he looks kind of old in Moses, which you said was like 3 years before this, or after this.
It was 7 years after this.
Okay, which in that he looks like he's like 40s. So I would guess here he's like maybe 32.
I also thought that. Like he looks like mid to late 30s in this.
Yeah.
This man was 26 years old.
Oh, it's a case of he is from the 50s, so he smokes and drinks a lot and looks like an old man at a young age.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I checked that number 4 different times.
26?
I thought he maybe lied about his age. I looked up to see if there were any belief, our rumors or anything that Charlton Heston lied about his age. Nope. Just it turns out living a life in the 50s is a rough time.
Yeah, dude, not that this is the 50s, but I was literally just last night saying to Sam, I was like, I just found out that when they made Seinfeld, when it premiered, what's his name? George Alexander. He was 25, the guy who plays George Costanza or Jason Alexander. He was, and I was like, what? He looks like he's 50.
We could talk about that forever. Cause but genuinely, while I was watching this, cause this is the other thing that's important as well. Cause we've talked about the inconsistency with Jane's age. How old do you think the actress was?
Oh, was she older than him or the same age? She's 26.
She's 27.
Ah, she's older than Rochester. That's amazing. That is so great. She does not look it. Wow.
I know. I like fully believed that she was 20 and he was 37. Like I was
Mhm.
like, for sure, that tracks for me.
Wow. I wonder if that feels like a punch in the gut to Charlton Heston. He's like, ouch, ooh, ow.
And she did almost exclusively these TV movies. She did a ton of them all
Mhm.
the way into the 80s.
Cool.
But she did almost exclusively like either TV shows or these TV movies. There was a couple other actresses on this who were in like soaps and stuff. So
Mhm.
I didn't pull any of their information, but like Charlton Heston was the breakout star of this film. And it was these kind of movies that seemed to me to be his way of getting into that. One other thing, because I always bring in unfun facts, because it turns out when you look into like people from the past, they were all racist, sexist, and terrible. Charlton Heston was not at all. He
Oh.
like, it was the first time I've ever read like political life as like a subcategory on Wikipedia and went, okay, here we go. And learned a bunch of really cool facts about him. He was like a genuinely like really active in the civil rights movement as a movie star. That was a really big deal. So if you want some uplifting 50s movie facts, go learn about Charlton Heston being
Aw.
amazing.
Yay. Well, that
And,
makes me really
and please,
glad.
I guess, like technically correct me if I'm wrong, but please don't tell me about bad things he did unless it was like really bad and I have to take this back. I did try to check.
No, oh my God, that makes me so glad too. Because, yeah, most of the time I'm like, please don't burst my bubble. I want to pretend this person's cool.
Like, can we just live in the world where this is fine? And then we just keep learning terrible things about people.
Hmm. Oh,
Oh,
well, yay.
okay.
I'm glad that we chatted about that. I was looking up some of them too because her voice, the woman who plays Jane, it
Hmm.
sounded so familiar to me. I thought for sure she had been in something that I knew, but I didn't recognize anything. So I think she just had sort of the kind of like voice of that time where like a lot of
Yeah.
people sort of just sounded like that, sort of the transatlantic accent, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the impression like there was this, like they used to, this is one of those things where like, I never know if this is like the lore of Hollywood or if this was real, but like I picture those like schools where they taught young women how to be like the trope of an actress. Like, here's how to be a movie star. You be exactly like this thing, because that's the only way women exist in the world. So she very much like felt like that to me. And like I said, I even double checked. I understand there's a difference in quality between TV and movies, but my God, is there a difference in quality? Because like this was 49. So I knew it was after our 43. I knew the quality was going to be less than that. I also, because of the Thornfield, Thornfield, Thornfield line, that felt like there's no place like home. There's no place like it felt like that so intensely. The Wizard of Oz was 1939.
Mhm.
The Wizard of Oz was a full decade before this, but
Yeah.
like I got a lot of Dorothy vibes
Hmm.
from the Jane in this. Like a lot of the things she did and said, like
I totally
felt
see that.
very Dorothy like to me.
Yeah, could have been. How did you feel about
Mm,
Adele in this?
what a kid. She was a one of like six people in this movie. So she had a lot of lines and a lot of screen time. She seemed a bit older
Mhm.
than some of our Adeles, but not in a bad way. I think she was a fine little child actress. How about
Yeah,
you?
I liked her. I thought she was very cute, not annoying. Sometimes an Adele can seem annoying to me. One thing I did like a lot about this is so the first scene we're given is a mean lady kicking out our protagonist and being mean to her. And then this immediate second scene that we get is, I think, one of the warmest welcomes to Thornfield we've seen in an adaptation, where
Hmm.
she comes in and instantly Mrs. Fairfax is just so nice and doting. She's brought in and brought tea, and Adele is sleeping in the chair because she was so excited to meet her new governess that she fell asleep waiting for her, which was
And
so
stayed
cute.
asleep for the loudest welcome
Yes,
anyone's
yes, didn't wake up until she was like nudged. But then it was just so like warm and loving. And so I really liked that. It made me happy for Jane. I was like, oh, you did it. You found a nice place.
Yeah. And Jane talks a lot about how much she loves Thornfield.
Hmm.
Like that's the main thing that Jane says out loud over and over again in this movie. Like well before Rochester shows up, she sits on her bed and delivers a monologue to an empty room about how much she loves Thornfield, just so that
Yes,
we all know.
yes. Lots of talking aloud to herself. But I thought that was an interesting choice because they didn't do Well, I guess they kind of had like a bit of a narrator from Jane's like inner monologue. Wasn't there a moment at the end, or was the quality just so bad I couldn't see her mouth moving?
I had the same sort of question where I was
Hmm.
like, is she talking to herself or is she monologuing in her head?
Hmm.
Because when she's standing by the tree, which is all she does to run away, she
Yes.
runs away. And there's sort of an implication, like we know the story, so we know that she's supposed to be off with other people, but all we see is her standing by a tree and thinking about Rochester.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I that would be the only instance where she could have had an inner monologue.
Hmm.
She did a lot of talking to herself. She did a lot of talking to Leia, which I've seen. Is it Leia or Leah?
I think it's Leah,
Okay, because they
the
called
maid.
her like Leia a
Mm.
lot.
Mm.
Or just the way they pronounced it was weird, and I'm the one who misunderstood that. But so that she talked to her a lot, like she just had more friends and was more social in this than most of
Yeah.
the adaptions that we see. They had a lot more, despite their tiny little cast, they had a lot more attendees at their wedding that happened in the house.
I have to say, I did like talking about Jane talking with other people about her feelings. I did like the choice of her, like, talking to Fairfax to admit that she loves
Mhm.
Rochester, like, right to her. This is, I think, a very different story from a classic Jane Eyre, but I didn't mind some of the choices that they made. So like having her kind of like actually fall back on people, because if this was the Fairfax in the book, then no, of course he wouldn't go and be like,
Mhm.
I'm in love with my employer. But this isn't that Mrs. Fairfax. This is a very nice lady who's essentially like your like adoptive mom, and you're like,
Uh-huh.
Mom, I love this guy, and she's like, oh no.
Well, and she tells Fairfax, I have to leave. Like,
Mhm.
she's like, instead of it being a Rochester sort of implying that she's going to have to go, and like, she doesn't talk to Rochester about the fact that she's going to leave. She talks to Fairfax about it, which was also just like a really interesting choice that they had a woman choose to talk to another woman instead of the man she's in love with, who is who she talks to in the book.
Mhm.
So I do feel like that would be more realistic to like, because if you think about it in some ways, like Fairfax is her manager and then Rochester's the boss. And so like she's friends with Fairfax and like they do say a bunch of buck wild things in this about that. Like Fairfax, one of the first things she says to Jane is instead of the conversation around like I can't really talk to the servants as like a way to explain the social classes,
Mhm.
they like try to elevate Jane by being like, you're not one of the servants. You're a person of refinement.
Yeah.
These hoes can go. You're cool.
Which I'm like, wow, I guess we only really have Fairfax's word to believe that, because otherwise, she kind of seems just like an orphan who was kicked out on the street, not a
here's
lady of refinement.
here's another thing that we just have to sort of trust people about that Rochester's rich.
Right, because he's just kind of like in this little like living room setting, which kind of looks like a bit nicer than like an old-timey sitcom stage.
Which I kept referring to as a living room, but he kept referring to as a library. And I was like, dude, there are no books in here.
Yeah, true.
Another thing, another thing that was like, you are poor. Just say it. Like you weren't lying to Blanche. You lost all your money. You're super poor now.
Yeah.
Because he like explicitly says to Jane in the moment when he's gonna have her play the piano, he says, do you play the spinet instead of the piano? And I was like, okay, I'm assuming this is like some sort of variation on piano. And I Googled it. And it was basically like the poor man's piano. It was like if you couldn't
Oh.
afford enough space or like a real piano or even an upright piano, you would get this like mini version of a piano. And I like looked to see if like maybe because it sounds very old timey.
Hmm.
And it is like referenced that it is more like the 18th century.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, that like makes sense to me that you're referencing something a little old timey to try to like make it seem old timey. But I looked, it's not in the book. They call it a piano in the book.
Yep.
This they just like could not afford a full piano. And also they definitely reuse these sets for the
Hmm.
different movies that they do. So
Yeah.
like I saw a clip from a different one for a myriad of reasons. And I was like, look, it's the same living room.
Oh my gosh, fun. Yeah, when she sat down at it and started playing, it sounded to me kind of more like a harpsichord, sort of tinny in like
Yeah.
not a piano full kind of vibrato way.
Yes. And it's yeah, it was a lot smaller and there was just some other things around like just the choices that I made where I was like, Rochester, you can tell me the truth. Are you fucking poor? Because I get it.
Well, Jane would love him anyway.
Can we talk about Bertha? Because
yes.
they made some choices.
Okay, so my first note about Bertha is she has the creepiest and best laugh, probably, of any Bertha. It literally sounds like when the evil queen in Snow White turns into her like wicked witch form. It sounds like that kind of like dry, like hacking back of the throat like laugh. And I'm like, ooh, that is good and creepy. I like that. That was good.
Yeah, what I found really interesting in this as well is they went for a more explicit presence of Bertha. They were like, we've only got an hour. We got to tell this story fast. We need you to be creeped out. Where like some of the other, like the 34 and the 57, the other, I don't know if the 34 was a TV movie. I don't think it was, but two of our other kind of like lower of the end Jane Eyre's, they kind of make Bertha an afterthought. They really lean on Grace Poole being super creepy, where in this one, they really leaned on, we're just going to tell you that there's a creepy lady who lives in this house. We're not going to explain who she is. She's just going to be watching out of a window all the time.
So good. Oh my God. I don't know if we should talk about the wedding yet. Maybe we should save that, or because we're on Bertha, we should just talk about it.
Let's just talk about Bertha. I don't think we're going to do this in a straight up and down order because it's wild.
It's so funny. Okay. So yeah, first they clearly were like, well, we can't set a bed on fire. That's a lot. So they're like, he's going to fall asleep in his library/living room.
Beautiful.
And then Bertha comes creeping down the stairs and I was like, whoa, there she is, like front and center. And she like takes, like you said in the description, she lights a newspaper and like sets it under his chair. And at which point I assume an intern turned on the fog machine so that the billowing fog rolls out, which is supposed to be the smoke.
I think they just lit some shit on fire. I think they made the actress light some shit on fire. This was very, like, a lot of this was a play. Like they were doing a play and they were filming it. And absolutely that was we're just going to have like a big thing and we're just going to actually have a for real fire. And there's no reason that's going to be a problem. It's 1949.
It's fine. I mean, Jane actress, her scream when she like goes to get him sounded pretty real and alarmed. So maybe they did actually set that chair on fire and she's, holy F, they didn't tell me they were actually going to do this.
That's another moment where it's like, it's things that you don't think about until you watch someone do it shitty. And then you're like, I guess all of the other ones did this well. She woke up, then she heard the laugh. There was nothing to wake her up other than the fact that we all just saw a fire start. So that was beautiful and amazing. The music in this is hilarious. I want you to picture I'm sure all of you picture Piper and I watching this separately alone in like a split screen in your head. I want you to picture me dying laughing the second we see Bertha on the stairs. We see Bertha in her like full, just like, what does a crazy person's face look like? And she made a crazy face. Piper just made a great one. So makes a crazy face, holding a candle. She's walking downstairs. You do not have to know the plot of this movie to know that she's going to start a fire. She goes, great, you left some kindling for me on this chair. It's like she picks up a newspaper and then we watch her start a fire. And I'm dying laughing the whole time. It's the funniest scene I've ever seen. And then it quick cuts to Jane just screaming. For no reason.
What I love though, so putting Bertha front and center like this, it really makes me like go put on my Team Bertha t-shirt. Because in other versions where simply you hear the laugh and then you see the bed on fire, you don't see her actually doing the deed. And so to see her in her big old nightgown creeping through the night, and she's like, Bertha's gonna cause some shenanigans. And she's like, hee hee hee, burning things, and then back upstairs, no one will see me. Like, I'm just like, oh man, you are having fun. Go burn that man. Do it.
I am absolutely Team Bertha in this movie. Here's my reasoning. One, I actually think Grace Poole is on Bertha's side. I think Grace Poole doesn't think Bertha's crazy. I think she wants people to leave her alone, but because she like tells Jane right away, like, don't come upstairs. Like, I'm sorry, nobody told you about that. This door is not locked even one single time in this film, but is supposed to be all the time.
Yes.
And then like we see Bertha like looking out the window, watching everybody because she's locked in an attic. And what else is she going to do with all of her time? She is one floor up, guys. She's one floor up, fully leaning out a window. There's like, does no one ever look up when they're on the garden?
Oh, it's so good. Because I think what they were doing is they were like, we need to do visual storytelling here. So I think
but only for this, everything else is tell.
Right. My favorite moment when we see her in the window is like after the wedding's been interrupted and the camera kind of goes in front of Rochester and then like angles up and she is up there in the window and she's like gnashing her terrible teeth and rolling her terrible eyes. And he's like, I have a wife, and it's so dramatic. And she's like, yes, it's me.
This is one of the other things that we have to talk about. The framing in this is another character, and she's a comedian.
Yes.
Oh my God. So funny. They are never both in frame. I have so many screenshots. Get ready for the Instagram this week. It's just going to be that screenshot. I got like 17 versions of that because it was the funniest thing.
So good.
The number of times that Rochester is delivering a dramatic monologue and we cannot see his head. Mm-hmm. And it's not a choice they made.
Oh, I don't know about that. I would disagree.
Then why is he constantly cut off at the forehead?
Oh, if it's at the forehead, then yeah, then you're right. But I was thinking of like when we first meet him, I thought it was an interesting choice that you only see his hands and he's like kind of threateningly like twirling this cane that he's got. But I was like, oh, that's interesting because now it's very mysterious. And then it gradually pans so you can see who Jane sees. And there was a couple of times like that where it's just like his hands or something like that to kind of make him seem big and mysterious.
Yes, absolutely. I think there are for sure moments where they're doing this on purpose, but 99% of the time they're not. And if you want to see my favorite of the shitty cinematography, check out our Instagram this week. It's all it's going to be. I'm so excited.
Amazing.
But yeah, they had that moment where like his head is giant and filling up like 90% of the screen. And then like you can kind of see Bertha in the background. Fantastic.
Doing her best.
Here's another reason I'm team Bertha. First of all, she's like loving the wedding, thinks it's freaking hilarious. Like very notably upset that her husband is gonna marry someone else. Like there's other moments where like somehow she hears that he's in love. Like there's moments where they're talking in the garden and you can tell that she can hear it. And she's like not thrilled. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm totally, again, like team Bertha all the way. And her like brother comes. So Mason doesn't come earlier, but when he comes to the house, he's like, it's like ostensibly for the wedding. Like somehow he heard about it and he's there for the wedding. But the first thing he does is like, go check on Bertha. Bertha doesn't do shit to him. She's like, hi, bro. It's like, we don't see the whole meeting.
She's like, cool. You got my letter. Thanks for coming.
Great. Like, thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I'm so glad that you're going to just ruin the wedding, but leave me here with this man. And like, then again, like another Team Bertha moment, we hear them have a conversation about how Grace Poole does not want to bring Bertha down because Bertha's having a bad day. And he goes, I don't give a shit. I'm Charlton Heston, and you will bring my wife down to this living room to be a public mockery. And she comes down with like her wrists tied together.
Yep.
And she goes, hello, husband. So nice to see you, like thrilled about that. And then looks over and goes, oh, look, the bitch you were going to marry instead of me, and lunges at Jane. And I'm like, and Jane like screams and runs away. And like, just the whole thing was so campy and wonderful.
It's amazing. I agree. I kind of want to know how Bertha got them there because I feel like it was her. I almost see it as in like, the Quest for the Holy Grail Monty Python, when that little prince up in the tower like just like shoots a little letter with the arrow out the window. But yeah, no, they get there. I thought it was so funny too that Grace Poole comes down and she's like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, we need to go see my sister. This lawyer, whatever he is, needs to know so he can appropriately interrupt the wedding. And it's like take us to your private chambers. And she's like, up the back stairs, I guess. And it's just like this whole scenario.
She's like, I don't want to, like, first of all, I don't know you. I don't know that you're telling the truth. I don't know that you're a lawyer. And I don't know that you're Bertha's brother. Second of all, you explicitly don't want me to tell Rochester that you're here. I feel really uncomfy about this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm team Grace and Bertha all the way. I'm going to write a whole like fan fiction specifically about this adaptation where
Amazing.
Bertha and Grace Poole are in love. Um,
And they're like, oh my God. And then we'll do this and it will totally ruin their special day. It'll be so great.
and Bertha's just like constantly venting to Grace, being like, honestly, some days I just want to like burn the whole thing to the ground. And Grace, like, you can't do that. Like, it's not going to be a good time.
So Grace is like, just give me a heads up so I can not be here when that happens, but you do you.
listen, you can do one little fire. Here's how you do it.
I thought, so obviously they had the wedding at the house for budget reasons.
Yes.
But like parts of it were cute. I mean, I thought the idea of like, you know, Adele comes like down the stairs, like she's kind of the flower girl, and then Adele sits at the piano, sorry, whatever you called it. Poor man's piano, and she like the piano, and she tinkers out a little wedding march. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cute. They're just doing it in their backyard in their house, and Adele's a part of it. That's nice. But yeah, serious dick move to have your wedding right in front of your mad wife's window so she can watch. That's just rubbing it in the face, and that's mean Rochester.
So good that Bertha's like very masochistic about it and is like, they know that I exist, because she knows her brother's there with a lawyer. Like, she knows it's about to get interrupted.
So good.
Team Bertha. I'm Team Bertha in this movie.
Agreed.
Here's another really amazing moment. Do you have other things? I have a when Jane leaves moment.
Go for it.
Okay. Jane leaves.
Yeah.
It's a medium to bad speech. It's fine.
Yeah. That's not really.
Rochester does his like, so you hate me now. And he gets more and more emotional. And then we see probably a solid 10 seconds of this man draped on the stairs about it.
I laughed so hard at that because it's like, at first she's going up the stairs, right? And he's like standing on the main floor and he's like holding her waist. So at first it makes sense, but she keeps backing away and going up more stairs. So he's more and more kind of like accidentally kind of like leaning on the stairs. By the time she's gone, he just looks like a 5-year-old who's like, you took away his toy and you sent him to timeout and he's slumped on the stairs face down, his long legs hanging down the stairs. He's like, me, just having a little sad mopey fest. And it was so funny.
Just so sad.
The other like physical comedy thing that wasn't meant to be physical comedy but made me laugh out loud is one of the moments when Jane and Rochester are like flirting in the living room / library, and he's walking around and twirling his little stick, and at one point he like props his boot up on the couch that she's sitting on, and I just wrote in big letters, crotch in face. Like, it's just like, let me just get my junk right up in your business. Jane, did you know that I like you? And it's just like, oh my God, dude.
There's so many good, like, just fantastic. Like, first of all, this is absolutely one of those, like, men think that women find this attractive about men, but we don't. Like, he does a great, Charlton Heston is a great actor, and therefore obviously he does a great job of reading classic Jane Eyre lines. Like if you did like a supercut of just like the moments where Charlton Heston is reading great Jane Eyre lines, absolutely I'm watching that.
Yeah. And you must have loved when he did the whole like string under my rib thing.
Great.
Yeah.
And the fact that they brought it back, great.
Yeah.
They did it because they did it again, like, because I'm sure so many of you are not going to watch this version of it. We're doing a great job of selling it. But
it's on YouTube, by the way.
It is on YouTube. Don't ever pay anyone money to watch this one.
Yes.
Anyway, so like there's like those are great moments. He went over the moor. We hear that line again. Like he's a good actor. But this man, we've talked about this before. We talked about it with the 57. I do think 57 was a little bit more like drunk aggressive. But this Rochester is also like, we talked about that line of like passionate to dangerous.
Yep.
And this Rochester crosses it all the time. Literally, there is a moment after the fire where Jane says, I'm going to go get Mrs. Fairfax. And he grabs her wrist and is holding it. And she says, you're hurting me. And he doesn't let her go.
Yeah.
And instead he makes her repeat the lie that he wants her to tell.
Yeah. Not good.
What the fuck?
Not good. No. Bad news.
We have to mark this as explicit, or you have to bleep out all my bitches and fucks.
He also, like, at one point while holding the stick, he does the kind of like tap it against his hand thing, which I only ever see when someone's threatening to hit something with a stick. And I'm like, dude, that's not hot. That's scary. Stop.
Yeah. There's a few other moments where I was like, real close. Missed like hard. Like you missed bad, guys.
Yeah. He kind of like snaps in that same scene when he puts his crotch in her face, where like at first he seems like he's cool and happy, but then he just randomly has a little tantrum when he throws his pipe against the wall. And we talked about how like in the 70 movie that we like, there's a similar scene, but that one I think is understandable because it's sort of his breaking point of like trying to find a reason to not fall in love with this girl and commit bigamy. And she's like so perfect that he's like, God damn it. Like, I can't say no to you. But like, this doesn't have that. It just felt sort of like he just kind of threw a little tantrum.
Well, and then the other thing too, that's like layered in this for me is Jane in that one is like, we see demonstrations in the 70 version of her being strong. Like she is being strong. He is an ass and she is like right there with him, right at his pace, where this Jane is not. Like she said she was at the beginning, but she's just not. Like she in the there's so many moments when he's like that overwork, like crosses that line of safety. She does the fawn thing. So like there's the fight, flight, freeze, fawn are the different reactions to stressors. So it looks to me watching it like she is in an unsafe place and she does not feel safe around this man. And so in order to make the situation safe, she fawns over him. That's a very easy way for me to read this version. Like as we're watching this, I'm like, he threw stuff. So she fawned over him. He hurt her by pulling her wrist back. So she promised to lie for him. Like, and then like Stockholm syndrome, like I'm like, girl, you got to get out of here. You are going to be in that attic with Bertha so soon. You are not in love with him. This is a totally other thing.
Good thing she went and sat by that tree for 5 minutes.
Not even, I genuinely like not a full minute. And just like really thought about it. And in the meantime, Bertha was like, I'm going to burn this place to the ground.
And then, yes, you're right. Jane just walks back into the fully like not even like charred living room. And
here's a question
like,
that I have.
From the road, it looked like part of the house had burned. Thanks for telling us, Jane.
So like, I genuinely, like, I was going back and forth from different tabs. Like at this point, I'm just like finishing this comedy that I'm watching. And I like came back and was like, she was by the tree and now she's back. Did I miss, nothing looks burned. Did I miss it? I did not go back because I just couldn't do it. I was like, I don't really care. But we didn't see a burned house, right? Like they didn't even have like a fake picture of like where they put like smoke near a
Nope.
Oh
it was
God.
simply Jane in the garden. Fairfax comes out and Jane says to her, she's like, is everything okay? The house looked kind of burnt from the road. And she's like, oh yeah, well, a fire started, but luckily our garden and living room set are still intact.
It was all the West Wing.
Yeah, seriously.
The West Wing that none of us ever see, that I'm convinced didn't exist.
Oh, by the way, I have to say, I love so this set has a pair of like French doors that lead from the library living room out to the garden. And that they're like just glass panes, and it allowed for two wonderful moments. Yes. One, when both are when Rochester has invited Blanche and her mom over to like make Jane jealous. And one of them, so he's inside, he's having this party with Blanche and her mom, and you can just see Jane and Adele standing at the door, staring in at them. And he just goes up, opens the door, and he's like, what do you want? We can see you standing there. Do you want to come in and play piano? And she's like, okay.
Oh, good.
And then Blanche does the reverse when he's out there like trying to have a romantic moment with Jane, and you can just see Blanche standing, her nose against the glass. Like, I can see you. I thought I was your girlfriend.
What are you doing? Like when he brings Jane in to play the piano, like first of all, they couldn't afford a party. So it's just Blanche and her mom.
Yeah.
So it's not like he invited the governess in to play for like a party or something. He was like, no, Jane's like super good at this. Jane's like, I'm not, but okay.
Sits down like bang, 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 bang. It's like, isn't she great?
Blanche is like, this is super weird that you did this, dude. Like, this was very strange to do. So I'm just going to keep talking.
Yeah.
And then like says a bunch of stuff. Like, I think she says some shitty stuff about Jane. I'm laughing too hard to register any of it.
No, she's just like,
Jane like leaves. She's so upset about it.
Blanche is just standing there like talking shit, like literally doing what Blanche does best and bragging about how mean she's been to people. And I love that Rochester doesn't even acknowledge what she says. He's just watching Jane play. And then he says, he's like, isn't she talented? And they're like, I guess. They're like, that was charming. I don't know. Like,
here's another classic you fucked up Rochester line. He refers to Blanche, to Blanche's face. He goes, you would be a great acquisition.
Yeah,
terrible.
That's not a good word to use. Gross and bad. Here's another, I wrote gross in my notes twice. The second time is at the very, very end when Jane comes back. We have a super quick Rochester self-pity. He thinks that because he's blind, he's totally useless now, which I think it's more that he's poor and abusive, but you can't be poor and abusive, guys. Sorry, that was a dark joke. Yeah.
So, the line that Jane says back to him, and it's like one of the only things they say is like the romantic reunion, is, oh, dear master, I have come home.
Yeah.
And there are moments when Jane calls him master before. I hope to God when we read the book, the end of the book, she does not call him master at the end of the book.
I would not be surprised if that's in there. But again, it's all about the context and how you read it, I suppose, but
yucky.
One of my last notes about this is that I feel like the set wasn't super strongly built, because I felt like there were 2 times when I saw him lean against something and it seemed like he stumbled or like the table like shifted or broke, and he like catches himself and he keeps going. And I was like, are they limited on the amount of film they have? They're like, we can't do another take. We're keeping the one where you stumbled.
So that's one of the things that like, I don't know. And I'm sorry, I came up with lots of fun facts about Charlton Heston, but a guest that I have, he seemed like a theater actor when he was doing this. Like he felt like a theater actor. So the fact that he was in his first movie in 41 and then has that big gap till 49, I would guess theater. Yeah. Like I would guess that's what he was off doing, because that makes a lot of sense for a lot of the weird things that he did. Yeah. My other thing with the like cheap sets and stuff and like props, he has the saddest little stick. They gave him the saddest little blind man stick. It's not even the same. Like he had a cane before. Yeah. That was a pretty decent cane. They give him a sad little twig of a blind man stick. So funny.
But he is a classically stubborn male who comes down the stairs and Fairfax is like, oh, why didn't you call one of us to help you? And he's like, I can do it myself. Like,
I'm a man. I'm going to break the rest of my house and you're going to have to fix it. But as a man.
Great. So those are most of my notes.
Those are pretty much all of my notes. I do have like literally wrote down all the different sets. Some of these I would argue are actually one set, but I did say, so I said outside Lowood. My guess is that's just a reframe, one of the other sets that we've seen. Outside the house and the living room. Arguably those are the same 2 sets, like that garden and the living room. Then there's the front of the house, which we see only when Jane like shows up, and then Jane's bedroom and the hallway outside, and then just that one solo tree.
Yep, that's it.
That is every single set in the entire movie.
They did it.
I'm so proud of them.
Yeah.
They made a movie.
You
guys, you made a movie.
Yeah. As part of the Red Hot Soap Radio Hour.
Last thing that I have is I will give them, they did spend a part of their budget correctly and or pulled the right stuff out of the costume closet, because we did have some good bonnets for Bonnet Watch. Yeah. When we very first, they're not all seen a lot. When we very first see Jane, she's wearing a great bonnet when she's telling everybody who she is and inaccurately describing how her character will behave for the rest of the movie. And then Miss Fairfax and Leah have great bonnets as well. Rochester has like a cloak coat thing.
Oh, I like
that. Has the world's craziest collar.
Dude, I really liked that. Like, he looked like an anime villain. It was so cool with his like two-layered, like flowing kind of half cape. And then the collar was insane.
The collar was its own character.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jane has, when she and Adele are hiding in the garden and looking in through the French doors, she has like a scarf over her head that looked like her sneak-in costume.
Yeah, she's like, they'll never see me. Standing against the glass.
Anyway, if you love the campy, like, you guys technically did use the same character names and some of the same lines as Jane Eyre. Good try. Watch this. It's funny, guys. It is a funny time.
It's good, yeah.
But not Jane Eyre.
No, definitely not. One of my notes was having Bertha this visible throughout the thing. It's just a different story.
Different story.
Yeah, it really is. I think that changes everything because her being a secret and it's like, is it a ghost? Is it a drunk like employee? What is it? Like, that's a big part of Jane Eyre. And the fact that it's just like, oh, here she is, it's Bertha the wife. Then it's like, this is just a different story with similar names.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just was double checking my ratings on the films that I'm comparing this to the most, which is the 34 and the 57. And first of all, past Lillian, you're always rating things based off of your mood in the moment, because I get my rating for the 34. It was a 3 out of 10. I get it. That makes sense to me. I hated that movie.
Yeah, not great.
Which we did have a listener point out that movie came out in the Depression. So that may have been why they made it so much shinier than a lot of the other ones. So I will give them credit for that. But that's all that they get credit for. But the 57, guess what I rated that?
6.
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
You did? Oh my gosh.
What was I on?
I don't know. We were laughing a lot during that episode. I think you might have been bumped up your rating.
It has to have been the joy of talking about it. Because that is, if I was going based off of the, like, is the movie a Jane Eyre movie and is it a good movie? This movie is not getting points.
Amazing.
So
do you want to share? Yeah, what is your rating for this then?
Oh God, I am going to give this a 5 out of 10, and all 5 points are because I found it funny.
Very
and Charlton
nice.
Heston delivered like 2 lines where I was like, hello, sir.
Oh, but what is your basis of?
I'm going to go 5 out of 10 Charlton Hestons.
Oh,
he really carried this movie on his back and then did beat it into the ground. So it's like sort of both sides of it are Charlton Heston.
You know what, Lillian? I feel equally just like right in the middle, moderately entertained, enjoyed. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 Berthas.
Ooh, yes. Yeah. This is the movie. It's Bertha and Rochester.
She's like, my time to shine.
You gotta warn me when you're going to do a great face so I can get a screenshot, Piper.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to be photographed like this.
So since I know that our listeners who stick around this long are probably actually interested in this, I did save one little fun fact to share with you, not about the show, but just a fun thing about Jane Eyre. And this is going to go on our Instagram, but right now Piper is about to react to a purchase that I made this weekend.
Oh my. Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte.
It's just a beautiful version of Jane Eyre.
Ooh, it's very pretty.
At a used bookstore.
That's beautiful.
I found it and it was with a bunch of vintage books. Guess the year they think is vintage is 83, in case anyone wants to feel very old. But it is a beautiful book. And one of the reasons that I bought it is it has illustrations in it. Sorry if my voice is being weird. I'm trying to look at a book while talking into a mic, but it has illustrations in it. And the moments they chose to illustrate were 10 out of 10. They were fantastic.
Ooh, yes, please post pictures. I love illustrations.
So you guys will get to see these on Instagram. Piper gets to see them right now. So starting from the back of the book, because I'm only going to show you 2. So they did pick some normal moments. Like here's the wedding being interrupted.
Oh yeah, you can kind of see that.
Yeah, that's pretty. There'll be pictures. It'll be easier to see. Then here's another like semi-normal moment that they picked, which is Bertha wearing
trying
the veil.
On. Ooh, spooky. Very good.
Very spooky. Very good. And then here's my favorite. This is the reason I bought this book at a used bookstore.
Yes, I've seen someone post a picture of this on the Facebook group before.
Describe what you're seeing.
It's incredible. It's Rochester in his gypsy costume, but it's like straight on, and you can just tell that it's like a weird looking man in a wig in a dress, and Jane is standing before him.
So the costume is not hiding his identity even a little bit at all.
Oh, amazing. If that's the man that you fall in love with, like, wow. Good for you, I guess.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so beautiful.
That's funny.
So I own this now. This lives in my
Yay.
house. I am actually planning on like collecting different cool versions of Jane Eyre that I find, because I love a used bookstore. I love a like cool vintage bookstore, and I never have anything to buy there, because why would I buy books that I don't know for more money than I think they're worth? Like Jane Eyre.
You know what?
That person.
That last illustration makes me think of, do you ever see like Polar Express or Scrooge, the Jim Carrey's motion capture Christmas Carol? He looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like where they're like, ooh, we're gonna make it look hyper realistic, but the technology isn't there yet, and you're like, oh no,
it's a bad time.
Yeah.
So I'll post the cover of the book and all the pictures of the book for everybody to look at. I just wanted to get Piper's reaction to this new acquisition live on air.
Ooh, I liked it. I liked it very much. So Lillian, what do our wonderful listeners have in store next week for when they tune in again? Because obviously they're obsessed and they need the new episode right now.
I think everybody feels that way every single week that we talk to them. Shockingly, we love you guys. We talk about it every day. We love you so much. But we have some a really exciting thing coming up. So Labor Day is the September 5th, which is when our next episode is scheduled to come out. And as you guys know, we usually do like a mini episode or something like that when it's one of those kind of holiday days. But I actually have started a new podcast called Care So Much. And one of my first episodes, I had an opportunity to interview Charlene, who we know from this podcast, from the Jane Eyre Files is her podcast. She's Air Guide on Instagram. She's a friend of the show. And I got to chat with her for an hour about Jane Eyre and why she cares so much about it.
Yay.
So we're going to go ahead and release that in the feed, along with, we'll probably record like I have plans for a game that we're going to play and do like a little baby intro. So you'll have something original from Piper and I. And then that cool little bonus episode will be in the Airbuds feed next week.
Awesome. Lily, I've listened to some of your episodes so far, and I had the honor of being a guest on one of them. So I can't wait to hear this. You guys are in for a treat. Lillian is a great interviewer when she's not gushing with me about things that we love/hate about Jane Eyre.
Yes. So that episode will actually be coming out next week as well. So just, you can find me on all those socials, Care So Much Pod. If you are interested in paying attention to that new podcast. And then obviously you'll get a little taste of that next week in your feeds here. And then we'll be back with a normal full episode, another book episode the following week on that.
Woo-hoo. Hooray.
I do have one ask, again, for those of you who've stuck around, because we always end up doing so much at the end here. But something that I have been looking for pretty actively, that I have seen clips of, but I cannot find a full version of, is there is another TV movie that is the 1952 TV movie in the same sort of like vein of this 1949 one, which, by the way, this was the first TV movie of Jane Eyre. And if anybody has a way for us to watch that, if you could email us or DM us on any of our socials, that would be amazing, because I have been trying to find it and have not been able to find even a way to pay for this movie.
Surely someone out there has an aunt or grandmother or uncle or grandfather who recorded this on VHS and has that sitting and gathering dust in the basement. So if you are that person, find it. We'll give you an address. You can mail it to us, and we will send it back with a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates.
You guys know how much we love Jane Eyre and love campy, like arguably bad versions of it. We would take the greatest care with your VHS.
Yes.
Probably watch it in Piper's parents' basement like we used to in high school.
Yeah, probably. Amazing. But yeah, if you want to send us information about how to get our little paws on your VHSs, then you can reach out to us. We are airbuds@gmail.com. You can also, as Lillian said, DM us on any of the social at airbuds. And if you want to help us out a little bit by leaving a 5-star review and a comment or sharing this with people, that helps a lot. And it lets us know that you like what you hear and can help other people tune in as well.
And we love you guys and appreciate you guys. And you can also send in, I specifically am looking for the 1952 version because that's one I know exists and seems like it should be accessible. But we are starting to hit the bottom of the barrel in terms of accessibility in some of these. Also, if you know anyone who speaks Italian, that would solve a lot of problems for me.
I was just going to say, if anyone is multilingual out there, I think there's a few versions that we've found that we don't have English dubs for or subtitles. So
which we might watch just without that because we know the story well enough. But if you want to help, I have some ways that we could get these translated, but we need someone who speaks the language of the thing to make it more accurate.
So we'd love your assistance with that. Reach out if you are interested. And otherwise, we'll probably just talk to you next week. And thank you so much for joining us. Happy Jane Eyre reading and watching.
Bye.
Bye.